Thinking of starting a business in 2023? Well, watch on. As a business accountant, my team and I spend all day long helping business owners on their journey. And early in any year, there's always a lot of interest around starting a new business. So it's normally, New Year's resolution. This year is going to be the year, and it's an amazing time. And as a result, we are very lucky to be able to work with a lot of people doing this kind of thing. So what I wanted to do in this video is share some experiences with you around sort of 5 key areas. I suppose tips is the best word for things we see work well with new businesses starting. So I'm going to dip in. It's going to be one of these ones where I'm probably going to say to you partway through, look at this video, look at this blog, because some of the topics you'll want to deep dive into. But for the majority of people, I think hopefully there's going to be something in here that's you're going to think, yep, actually, I do need to think about that. And it's not going to be groundbreaking thought leadership, but it is going to be real practical things that I think you need to know about. So let's get on with it. But before we do, be sure to click the subscribe button and the bell below so you get notified whenever we release more videos just like this one. So then, it's not going to shock you to know that point 1 of the tips is to make sure that you've got a plan. Now, before you think, oh, okay, I need to go and write 60 slides and a PowerPoint presentation, a big old spreadsheet and everything else, I'm not necessarily talking about that. I'm just talking about doing some real rough maths just to see, does the model work? Does this business actually going to make the money I think it does? Because we see people give up amazingly well-paid careers to go and do something and we're like, okay, but have you considered this? And then they get disappointed in a few years' time when they realise actually the volume they needed to sell, for example, is not going to be worth it, basically. It's not going to be able to replace their income and more and give them that lifestyle they wanted, which for a lot of people is the obvious reason that they want to go into business in the first place. So have some sort of plan, do some quick maths. So let's say you're going to do a cafe. Well, have a look, do some research, figure out how much the rent's going to cost and things like that. And then think, okay, well, that's the minimum I've got to cover. How much am I going to need to sell? How much does it cost to produce a cup of tea and a cake? And figure it out. And then you can do some backwards maths and figure out how many actual cakes you need to sell and teas you need to sell in a day to make all that work. And then you'll probably figure out at the end, oh, and I need to get paid somewhere along the lines as well. And it just gives you an idea of what you're getting yourself in for. So having some sort of financial plan is the absolute key. Okay, if you want to put it into a spreadsheet, brilliant. If you want to do some sort of forecast or seek professional help to get that done, brilliant. But I think for now, just do the simple maths, have a play around. And I think that's quite an exciting thing to be able to do because, you're playing with theoretical numbers, but have an understanding of what that break even is. What is it that I need absolutely to make this work? And then think about, okay, well, what happens if it takes longer to get customers than I think? And we're going to talk about that in a minute. What happens if there's some unexpected costs? What happens if actually the volume of customers isn't very high and actually they spend less with me? And trying to test out some worst case scenarios that you can get a feel for it. And for you personally, how long can I survive on this income without a problem where I'm just run out of money? Because that's the saddest thing. You get people that say a year and a half down the line, they've run out of money, but they've been out there getting their brand out there. People know about them. They're just about to make the difference, but they just can't survive anymore and it all falls to bits. So have a look, how am I funding it? How much am I going to need at the beginning to bankroll this? What's the other costs involved with it? Because there might be some upfront costs with equipment or solicitors for the lease or whatever the case may be. So figure out those things, have a plan. And if you did want a tool to help you out with that plan, if you just type in Cashflow Basics Healing in Google, you'll find there's a blog we did on our website and there's just a really basic spreadsheet that's set up so you can just put in some figures and it will show you what your cash balances look like and that kind of stuff. Just gives you a feel for what's possible. But yeah, do those maths early. So point number 2 is while you're doing that plan, think about your offering. It could be your product or your service. Do you clearly know what it is and what its benefits are? So the reason I say this is we host here in our offices every month a networking do. And a networking event people turn up to and you'd say to someone, what do you do? And they'll go, oh, I'm an agile, blah, 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 blah. And you're no wiser at all as to what they do, who they work with, what type of people they're looking for, how much does it cost? So you can ask that question. So what budget do I need to work with you? Well, it depends. Well, yeah, but what? Is it 500? Is it 100? Are you a £3,000 a day consultant? So you have to understand what those things are. And people talk about 60-second pitches, but it's that kind of feeling. It's can you just quickly explain to someone what you do in a short space of time so people get it? But knowing that early, I've been to loads of these dues where it's very difficult to help someone if you don't know what they do and they don't know themselves. I don't think they've gone, I'm going to be a marketing consultant, and then you talk to them about it and they're like, so what's that look like? Well, it depends. What do you want? No. What do you offer? What do most people do with you? And again, you might be brand new. You don't know what most people do with you, but you should have some idea of what that could look like. Is it a £500 a month social media management, or is it a 50 quid a month for a post? Like, how do you structure it? So think about those things early on, and when you're thinking about it, then you can start to think about, okay, what differentiates me from the market? Why am I different? Not because I'm friendly, proactive, speaking no jargon, like all these kind of things. It's like, what is it actually that's the difference? Because many successful businesses are out there. They didn't reinvent the wheel. They just did something, took a slightly different spin on something that was already good. So think about that, and I think it'll give you something to think about as we talk about in a minute when it comes to actually getting customers to help your business along. So then once you've got that plan, and once you know what your offering is and how your kind of product is structured, because you kind of need to understand that to do the plan in a way, like what's it going to cost to actually do this thing, then the other thing that is then going to need to be happen is I need to kind of do the practicals. Like, what am I going to trade as? So there's tons of video content on the channel where you can go find out, should I be a limited company or not? Normally I quite often say to people, before you go and form that company, just stop, go back, check, have a look, is this for me? Do I need one? Because if you're not going to make any money, or it's really just a very small side hustle, you might find it's not actually financially worth it to have a limited company, and it's slightly more hassle. So think about that, and think, am I going to be a sole trader? Am I going to be a limited company? Am I going to be a partnership? Am I a charity? Am I a limited partnership? Like, there's these options, but most of the time it will come down to two main ones for 99% of the people, which is sole trader or limited, and just have a think. And once you've decided that, you're going to need to do some admin probably. There'll be some tax registrations that might need to happen, or you might need to form the company. You then need to think about, what's the customer journey? How does someone pay me? Do I need to invoice them? Is it on my website? How does that journey look? Everything. So how does someone inquire into my product? Have I got an email set up? Like, I actually think quite often when you talk to new people doing this, that's the real headache, is that the practicals. What's the customer journey look like? Someone hits my website, this beautiful website I've got. How do they contact me? How does that work? What happens if it's a weekend at 10 o'clock at night? Like, do I care? Like, so those kind of things, thinking about the practicals, and there's tons of things on there. So, and again, if you want to go into more of those, check out some of the playlists on the channel, or if you'd rather read it, if you just go to the healandassociates.co.uk website and look at the blogs there's a ton of content. If you just do Startup Guide Healan, for example, there's a great one there that we quite often signpost people to. So once you've got the practicals sorted out, and this is often fluid, I'm listing them in a kind of an order, because I do think you need to decide whether you want to do it and figure out that model first, but the others are a bit more fluid. And once you know your offering, the other one is to get out there then and try and attract some customers. That might be networking events, that might be you've decided you're going to spend some money on Google ads. I would caution that, but you for the majority of people, but you might decide that's the strategy you're going to use, or you want to push your Facebook or your LinkedIn or your Twitter, or whatever you're going to do, is think about, how am I going to go get those customers? What's my strategy? And we'll talk about action in a minute, but that's going to become quite close to it. But yeah, just think about, how am I going to get them? And having a solid plan, and just appreciating how many people you might need to talk to before you turn them into a customer. So there's a couple of key points here, I think, that we see quite often that are almost misunderstandings. The first one is that sticking a website up and having it beautifully designed and your SEO done and all that is a really good thing, but it's not an instant, in the majority of cases, it's not an instant money maker. It doesn't suddenly just, you stick it up and next week you got 10 calls and 5 of them become clients. Like, it generally doesn't work that way. It takes time. And time is a key theme that we've talked about a lot through this video. But yeah, think about the time it's going to take to do that. But so that one's quite a common misunderstanding. The same with Instagram or something like that. People think, I could just put up stock images for 5 days a week, and suddenly people are going to be in my DMs asking me what I do. And again, they're brilliant tools, and we've seen many people who are really successful using them. But I think they would tell you that there's a time element involved with all of that kind of thing. I mean, we're lucky to work with quite a few influencers who've obviously built up their sort of followings, but it wasn't an overnight thing. So think about that. That's quite a common misconception we see is around websites and social media. And then the third arm of that is that then if you're out doing networking events, it's the same kind of deal. You meet somebody for the first time, they might know who you are and what you do if you managed to pitch that correctly, but they might not need it right now, and they don't really know you, and it takes time to build relationships and trust. And again, time is a factor. So again, what we see is someone will do networking for, I don't know, a month and go, well, that's rubbish, didn't get anything from it. It's like, no, it might take a year or more, depending when someone's in the market and they know about you. And often it's a combined approach. With the businesses we see that are the most successful, they've got a combined approach. They'll do socials, they'll do networking, they'll do great websites and testimonials and all these other things that marketing experts will tell you to do because they work, and they'll do a combined approach. But what is the key factor in all of this? Time. And then finally, the fifth, and for me, the main point where we see, if we lined up all the owners we've worked with over the last sort of 16 odd years and said, okay, what's the factor? The biggest factor, I think, is that, apart from the fact they had good financials, is that they looked at it and they just got on and did action. I know it's not particularly great in English, but they went out and they just got going. So, and they were consistent about it. So again, if we were to look at sort of common mistakes we'd seen, you see quite frequently somebody do a couple of networking do's, not do it. Somebody do that Instagram, not do it. Somebody have a great financial plan at the beginning, never review it, never look at it, just not interested in the figures, just look at the bank balance every day and then wonder when the tax bill comes at the end of the year why there's no money left. Like, there's all these kind of things where the consistency has been lost. So consistency is a massive one, and the other one's just getting out there and doing stuff. So quite a few people say, oh, I'm going to start a business. I'm sure you've all got friends that have said, I'm going to start a business. How many of them have turned into businesses? Because that step, we were talking about the practical step of mapping out the customer journey in your head and like how do all these things do. They all take time, they might take money, but most of the time they take time and effort, and people fail at that hurdle. And then, as I say, then they get it all going if they do get past that hurdle and then kind of do nothing. So I remember seeing a good example, personal trainers. You know, if you're a new personal trainer, you might have no clients and you might just think, well, I'll just wait until my website does something. But you're probably better off, just as an example, sitting in the gym doing your work or browsing Facebook or whatever you're doing with a big personal trainer shirt on. You'd be amazed the amount of time people will probably walk over to you and say, oh, actually, are you free? Can I have a quick chat about it and lead on to something? That's far better than sitting at home. So there's all these kind of things we see a lot where people they almost hibernate. And the key thing with all the successful businesses you work for is they get out there, they get brand, they get awareness, they get people knowing, and it doesn't need to be some massive multinational, internet presence. It can just be they're well known in their local area in their networking circles, and that works really well. I've seen amazing businesses that have hardly any advertising at all. They just have a website. They might be on LinkedIn, but they do all of it, shaking hands and face to face, and that's amazing. So it's really, really possible. So, but action and consistency would be the key things that we see with people that have been successful over the years. And they tend to do it with everything they do. It might be they've seen a prospect and they will follow up because the other person hasn't followed up. Just because they said no the first time or they just didn't come back to them after sending a proposal, the amount of times that those people just are busy and just it's not forefront of the list, and just staying in that game it will turn them into customers or clients. And again, we see so many owners that are really good at that and can make that work for them as well. So we have it. So that's food for thought. And as I say, there's tons of practical things that need to be done around the business. But in reality, once you've got a bank account, you know how you can get paid and you can get out there and tell people about your business and getting going and doing it consistently with your marketing and your sales activities is going to be the biggest impact probably with getting this business rolling in 2023. If you've got any comments, please do drop them below. We love reading them and I do try to reply to them on a Sunday, and I'll see you in the next one.